Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Darlene Hartigan, and I'm the president of Save Our Soundside, Gulf Breeze, Florida. This is the Santa Rosa County action spot for the Florida Forever Day of Action. We are here today gathered around the property of Abby and Jeff Rodamaker, which we'll discuss more in a few minutes. But right now, we want to talk about Florida Forever. 5 years ago, 85% of the public of Florida voters voted to fund the purchase of conservation lands in the state of Florida so that we could keep our aquifers clean, our water bodies clean, so that we could have connectivity between wildlife habitats and many other things that purchasing these properties for conservation would accomplish. So far, this has not happened. Under Governor Rick Scott, those funds were allocated for business purposes. They wanted to increase business in the state of Florida, and so they used the funds for that. We are still waiting, and we are here today to say we have a constitutional right to have these conservation lands purchased for the purpose that we voted for them to be purchased for. We want these lands conserved, and we want Florida to be great again. We are tired of fighting our elected officials to save the land and save the trees, and we shouldn't have to be fighting them, and they shouldn't be treating us like the enemy. They work for us. Our tax dollars pay them, and it's about time we took back control. So that's what we're doing. Every county in the state of Florida has got a similar event going on in their counties for Florida Forever. Just a couple of things I want to bring to your attention about this, and that is that protected lands are important for many reasons, but they're important because of water quality and to keep our water supply clean. Rainwater percolates into the land. It goes down into the aquifers. It makes its way to the water bodies. For us here on the Fairmont Peninsula, we are surrounded by water. To the south of us is the Sound, the Intercoastal Waterway. To the north of us is Pensacola Bay. We are a 25-mile-long peninsula with an east-west orientation. No other landmass like it in the state of Florida. We are unique. We have not been treated as a unique piece of property. We have been allowed to be developed. If you look at the future land use maps for Santa Rosa County, you will see that the whole peninsula is colored in yellow. That means that it is ripe for development. They have taken this land out here. They have bulldozed trees. They have changed the floodplain. They have sucked the water out of the wetlands for the benefit of the developers who come in here and put houses jammed right up next to each other. What happens when that happens is that you have impervious ground that the rain does not soak into anymore, because 1 square mile, no, it's not a square mile. Let me see. 1 acre of wetlands sucks 1 to 1.5 million gallons of flood water. That's crazy. Why would you let them dewater wetlands when they are doing a job for us for free, that we then have to come in and spend millions of dollars in drainage, stormwater drainage? That's our tax dollars. We have to replace what Mother Nature was doing for free, just so some developers can make a buck and then go back to their home state. Doesn't even stay here. Anyway, the conserved lands would help our air and water quality. You know what trees, they take in the carbon dioxide and they let out oxygen. We need that. Everybody needs nature. People function better when they're close to nature. Physically, they're better. Emotionally, they're better. We need parks. We need trees. We need recognition by our elected officials that this is not something a bunch of tree huggers want. This is something a bunch of Americans want. And we are all together in this. It doesn't matter what party you're in. That's one thing I have learned since doing this. This is a nonpartisan issue. Well, it might be a little bit of a rich man versus poor man issue, but it's not a partisan issue at all. And so we need these signs. These signs tell the story that we've been fighting in Santa Rosa County, and we want recognition for it. We want our elected officials. Governor DeSantis, you said you were going to run on an environmental ticket, and the state of Florida does not start at Gainesville. You've got a whole western peninsula that you need to pay attention to, because we're having problems over here, bad problems. When they let these big developments go in, the existing homeowners flood. People are flooding now that have never flooded before. So we want you to pay attention to us, and we're going to demand it. We're going to do whatever we have to make it happen. I'm going to let Abby Rodamakers speak now, because she's going to tell you about this piece of property here that she bought that was going to be her forever home, and what nightmare she discovered.
Thank you so much, Tara, and thank you everybody so much for coming out today. We so appreciate your support. We've got a couple of people that have even come out from the north end. Mr. Jeff Ross and Mr. Jerry Cooey are out here today showing their support, and we can't thank them enough for being here for this Forever Day of Action, to see what has been done in the past to our lands, and why we need this funding, why we have to change this, why we have to protect these lands. We have to change the way we're doing development. So I want to follow up with a few things really quickly. So wetlands have several wetlands trees. They all have lots of natural filtration properties. 90% of Floridians obtain their drinking water from Florida's aquifers. Our aquifers run underneath the ground. It's a big collective lake, in essence. And so 90% of Florida gets their drinking water from an aquifer in some fashion. And that'll be important when you come up onto our land and see what the groundwater looks like on our property. Air and water quality, wetlands filter natural air and water quality, excess nutrients that are responsible for toxic algae blooms like those in Lake Okeechobee, or like the one they just found at Oriole Beach about a month ago. Wetlands trees provide natural filtration systems for those nutrients responsible for those blooms. As Dara said, 1 acre of wetland can store 1 to 1.5 gallons of floodwater. That's immense. And when you don't have that 1 acre of wetlands, that 1 to 1.5 million gallons of floodwater has to go somewhere. Mangroves reduce the wind speed and wave damage during things like hurricanes. This property, Nature's Cove, sits less than a half a mile from the water boundary of Santa Rosa Sound. It now has no natural tree barriers, no wind barriers, no wetland filtration. So why that's important? Why is this important? Why is Nature's Cove and the clear cutting of all those trees and the filling of the wetlands, why is that important to this piece of property? Well, in 1970, Santa Rosa County decided that they wanted to use a private citizen's land as a landfill, in exchange for a road being built to their house and that right-of-way being donated to the county. That dumping went on for years. It was never disclosed or recorded. It happened before requirements for liners of landfills that contain toxic leachate. We live in this area in a sand and gravel aquifer. And what that means is that the ground, the sand is porous. It soaks up things very quickly. Water moves very quickly through our aquifer. And so for the last 50 years, this contaminated groundwater has been seeping towards Santa Rosa Sound. Now, until about 4 months ago, we had some protection of that. We had a wetlands area. We had lots of trees. There's a stream that runs just behind these people standing here that goes all the way to the Sound. Now that those trees and those wetlands are gone and it's been filled in, all the runoff from there, from here, is going to go into that stream, and it's going to go straight to the Sound. Now, in a moment, we're going to walk up and we're going to do some digging. I'm going to show you what has been hidden beneath the surface of this property for almost 5 decades. But I also want to let everybody know that FDEP has a website. And on that website, you can go and you can find out what water bodies in your area are not meeting water quality standards. And so if you can look at this map, and I know it's really far away, but I'll leave it up here for y'all to see. Any place in gray is a water body that is not meeting water quality standards. Our waterways are already in danger, and we keep polluting and approving developments that are going to further damage and destroy what environmental protection we have left. Something has to change, and it has to change now before it's too late. With that, we're going to go on up and see what kind of horrible secrets have been buried by Santa Rosa County.
Your land just positive.
Yes. All right, guys, come on up.
All right, yeah.
Is filled with waste that begins 2 feet under the ground and goes so deep that we haven't been able to establish a bottom because the groundwater is so high. You can smell it, everyone, as the farther back you get to the big hole. And let's not go, we'll let him dig a hole right here. So, and he's gonna, this is what kind of the process that we had to go through. We had to dig holes across the entire property to find out the scope. And it turns out that there's trash from front to back and side to side. There's about a 75-foot piece of land that starts about 100 feet back from the property that is clear of trash, but the rest of the 6.5 acres is full, front to back, side to side, top to bottom. And as I said, we have not been able to establish how deep it goes because of how high the groundwater is. And so you'll see that the first couple feet is clean fill. Somebody came in and they put clean fill here. There was a lot of money that was expended in doing that. Dirt is not cheap. Then somebody came in and planted pine trees, rows and rows and rows of pine trees. We've had an expert arborist out to date those pine trees planting, and he estimates that they were planted in 1980 with a max range of 2 years in either direction. So 1978 to 1982. The last time this property changed hands was 1979. The county has known about this. It's in their minutes since 1970. I've been contacted by residents who have been here, who dumped trash here, refrigerators and such, at the time that it was a dump. It was on fire. There were dead animals, according to this citizen's report. So he's cleared off the first 2.5 to 3 feet of dirt. And okay. So, and you can see that it's clean. It's about 2 feet of clean fill. And then as he digs, there you begin to see. An FDEP was here in March after we found that our groundwater tested positive for excess limits above state allowable limits of lead, cadmium, and barium. They also found MEK, p-thiamine, and toluene. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Toluene, maybe. In the water. Those were not in excess of state standards, however, exceeded the laboratory's acceptable limits for groundwater. You can see that the groundwater is putrid and frothy. It's devastating. An FDEP in March came and saw this and told us that we should go ahead and build our house here. We should maybe build it on pylons. Definitely contact a structural engineer. And that they didn't feel that there was any concern for off-site contamination.
I'm going to start dumping the wet stuff over there.
So we might want to move.
Well, just so it isn't as bad and as muddy.
Okay. Yeah. So, and like I said, what's so devastating is the waste begins where the groundwater starts. This is so... If you can just imagine being told to build your forever home here. I have a child with a metabolic disorder and an immune deficiency. She has been hospitalized 8 times in her life, and she is 6 years old. And I was told to have my family live here and have my garden here, let my daughter play in this dirt. And this is what's beneath the ground. And FDEP has been aware of this since March. And they have fought over and over and made excuses and excuses as to why they weren't doing anything. There's a tire. So you can see, yes, they also, there's a very clear delineation about 100 feet behind here where it goes from this type of material to construction and demolition debris. Now remember, this was used in 1970. So construction debris contained asbestos, among all kinds of other things. But asphalt, insulation, roofing, motor oil jugs. Now I'm not talking about 50-gallon drums. I'm talking about 5-gallon drums of emptied motor oil. How many people throw away things with just a little bit left? How many chemicals are in this ground? We have found containers, industrial-sized containers of vitamins and pharmaceuticals. There is medical waste here. This is not safe for the people living here, and it is not safe for anybody living in this vicinity. And when they destroy the wetlands and they destroy the trees and they continue to approve developments, they are putting not just the environment, but every single citizen around here in danger. Okay, yeah, Jeff, baby, stop. Yeah, so we've made our point. I don't want to expose anybody else to this, but I needed people to see the scope And what FDEP, their reaction to this. How many other times have they come to properties like this and said, go ahead and build? Not a concern for off-site contamination, not a concern for health and human safety. How many other places are like this?
FDEP is not protecting us.
No, they are not, and neither is Santa Rosa County. So Governor DeSantis, we need your help. We need you to make Gulf Breeze safe. We need to make sure that our water is safe, that we keep our wetlands that have been doing a natural job of this, of protecting what groundwater is going to our sound. It is of vital importance to the health of our waterways and the health of our citizens, and we need your help.
When is the next county commission meeting?
January.
And I'll take our pictures and
I would love that.
print them out and show up in force.
We would love that.
Show up in force.
That's what we need, because right now the county sees it as they're fighting me.
Show up in force.
But we need to let them know that this is a community
I
issue.
will print out my pictures and I will
Thank
be there.
you. Yes, come. Thank you so much.
With your permission, can I make a YouTube video of some of the videos?
Yes,
I've got
please.
a team that will make YouTube videos.
Yes, please. Yes, we will take any support, any help that we can get. We have all along done the right thing. From the moment we discovered this, we have done the right thing. We did everything we were required to do by a federal mortgage lender, Penn Air, to obtain this land. We completed a wetland delineation, a boundary survey. We had a title company that was approved and chosen by our builder and that Penn Air regularly worked with. And yet, here we are, and we are being told that it's nobody's responsibility. Nobody can do anything about it. FDEP says, sorry, regulation started in 1974. So if this happened before then, you're on your own. That's not how it works, guys. And they're here. That's right. Because the reality is it's affecting us now. Doesn't matter when it happened. Their job is to make sure that our water and our environment is safe. And when it's not, they are supposed to let the public know, and they're not. So we need the community support. I need everybody to understand that this is a dangerous situation, and it's not going anywhere. It's been here for 50 years, and unless we get some sort of action on behalf of FDEP or Santa Rosa County that allowed this to happen, it's going to keep getting worse.
Abby, didn't you find evidence that there's additional landfills
Yes, correct. So,
around the county?
oh yeah, so at one time this county was operating 10 landfills simultaneously. And so not in this immediate vicinity, it is not just our 6.5 acres. Right behind us is what is called Overdown Pit. And we were not told that when we purchased this land, that it was a previous state-owned borrow pit that has clearly been filled in with something. But in 1965, the county purchased 4 acres from Overdown Evans and his wife, and the parcel numbers match that property. 4 acres that was used as a county dump. Again, before liners were required, before proper closure was required. And people on that street have reported finding medical waste after their foundations were sinking. They had to have them repaired. And when the repairmen came in, what they were digging up was medical waste. And so they've reported having animals die. People in the immediate vicinity have had multiple animals die unexpectedly without any indication of predatory involvement. There have been some significant health issues in the area. And so I would ask that anybody that has any information, anybody that suffered any sort of health impacts, go ahead and find me on Facebook and reach out to me, because I'm compiling a list of possible correlations. And so I can't express to you how much that this has to be a community effort, and we have to get things changed.
Where are these other subdivisions planned?
Right across the street, there is a development called Nature's Cove that has been approved. I believe that contains about 80 homes. That was where the engineers came in and said that there were covenants that restricted their use of private irrigation systems. The engineers came in and made that a public matter at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. And so obviously we have some concerns about that. If you're not allowed to have an irrigation well, why is that? Did they know about this prior to starting that development? They've also since put in monitoring wells at Nature's Cove that have specifically been permitted for chemical storage sites or chemical cleanup sites. So if that's something that, I mean, to me, a chemical storage is different than a hazardous waste, and typically they're classified differently. I don't know the specifics, but if that was a chemical storage or chemical dump site, I think that the public needs to be aware, and certainly anybody that buys a home there needs to be aware. People
for about 90 homes.
90 homes. And then there is also another development that shares the northern boundary line with this property. That is going to be called Waterleaf. That will be 18 homes going in on Overdown Drive, which across the street is where those families have homes where their foundations are sinking. And they report that when they dig under the ground, they find the same type of waste. They also report that there are things coming up from under the ground after a heavy rain. And that will happen. You'll find that this is, as I've said, a sand and gravel aquifer. Things migrate very easily. So 18 homes going in over there, sharing a boundary line. Almost 90 homes going in over there, and the county has not required any disclosures to be attached to any of that property. They have refused to halt development until water samples come in for Waterleaf. They said that it was not fair to hold up the developers.
The landowners.
Right. So, exactly. So, it is a concern. Look at that groundwater. The people that buy a house in that neighborhood have a right to know what is here.
You're going to plant gardens.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't.
No.
And that's the thing. The idea that people should be put on their, have a property and then be told, well, you can't have a garden or you can't have an irrigation well because it's not safe. Well, to me, that's a violation of personal property. I bought this land under the good faith assumption, following every requirement, again, by a federal mortgage lender, and in good faith that the county had appropriately recorded and documented their actions. And still, here we are. And we've been dealing with this since the first week of March. We closed on this property February 28th. And the week after, we began clearing to make room for our home. And that's when we began to find in every tree that got knocked over, trash entangled in the roots of these 50-foot pine trees. And then you can imagine it just went downhill from there. And then we've been fighting ever since. I would imagine so. I would imagine that everything on this land is contaminated. And like I said, we have been fighting for 8 months to have regulatory agencies whose job it is to enforce compliance with environmental regulations just turning a blind eye, and we've had to fight over and over and over. Yeah, well, I'm gonna make sure that at least the public is aware.
Have you notified the federal agencies?
Yes. So
Take a truckload of that, dump it on the county commissioner's property.
I would love to. In fact, there was a county commissioner that made light, in essence, of our situation, and maybe he should come and live here instead. He can have it, or the county can have it, but it shouldn't be a private citizen who.
Matt Gates is an environmentalist. Why don't he come and live here?
He's welcome to have it too. But, and that's the other thing is we've written the governor's office, we've written Matt Gates' office, we've written everyone, and we don't even get responses from most of those state and federal agencies, and that's extremely disheartening, and sometimes infuriating. I'm a tax-paying citizen in this county, in this state. I work very hard so that my elected officials and my family can have a good life. I pay taxes so that my elected officials get a paycheck.
I don't think Matt Gates is probably aware of this, but I want to send him these videos.
I've written his office, so
His office,
okay.
I'll call him on his cell phone.
Okay.
And I'll bring him here.
That would be great. We would love for him to see what's going on. I've written the governor's office. I filed a complaint with the attorney general. I filed a complaint with DBPR. I've filed every complaint and notified every regulatory agency that I can. And it wasn't until our story received national attention that started with the P&J News article written by Maddie Arnold that was picked up by USA Today and circulated nationally. I've been contacted by people in Canada that have read about the atrocious things happening in Santa Rosa County. And, you know, I guess it's also really important to point out that, you know, the regulatory agencies, they'll try to say, well, that's just how it was done back in the day. Everybody just dumped trash and buried it. But y'all, this wasn't just a neighborhood dump. This was a 6-acre landfill that, as you can see, had to be excavated first before they even dumped anything here. I'm sure it was a win-win. You take out the white sand, you get, you know, but this has been going on since the 70s. It is in the county commissioner's meeting minutes where this parcel, it matches the parcel that the county used as a landfill in exchange for the donation of the right-of-way for a county road. And so, you know, the idea that they were allowed to make an agreement to use this land and then 50 years later to be able to say, too bad, so sad. That's not okay. It was their job. They tried to save a buck then, and now they're trying to wash their hands completely, and that's not okay. They should have appropriately recorded their actions and taken a proper responsibility of this property at the time of use. And certainly now that they know. When you know better, you do better. And now they know, so they need to do. So, thank you guys for coming today.